Okay, everybody, go ahead and be seated. This morning, I want to discuss your testimony. I know you all think it's easy, that testimony is an easy word and we all know what it means, but I want to teach you how powerful it is and what it looks like and what it sounds like. This is one of my very favorite stories in the Bible. It's from the Old Testament. There's lots of history in it, and I really want to take it slow and be able to give you the background of this story and really get into depth. So look in Judges chapter 3, verses 12 through 30, if you want to follow along. I'm going to be speaking about this man, and I think I spoke about him about 7 years ago, about Ehud. If any of you guys remember that. For 7 years in the past, there's no way you're going to remember that now. But anyway, this is really my favorite testimony. So I want you to take a look at these verses. I'm going to expand on this because there's so much history in this passage. Once again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. And because they did this evil, the Lord gave Eglon, king of Moab, power over Israel. Now the Moabites do you remember Lot? Well, he was a Moabite, and so was his family. So these Moabites were ancestors of Lot and Lot's oldest daughter. There was incest involved, and so they had expanded greatly throughout Israel. The next verse says, God was angry at the Israelites right now, so he gave control to other people. So getting the Ammonites and the Amalekites to join him. So there were actually 3 armies coming together with Eglon. They came and attacked Israel and took possession of the city of palms. Now the Ammonites came from Lot and his younger daughter, and their children were the Ammonites. Now the Amalekites were ancestors of Esau. Do you guys remember who Esau was? That was Jacob's twin brother was Esau, and they were enemies. So the Amalekites were descendants of Esau, and they were terrible enemies of Israel. So all of these forces were coming together. And God was watching Israel being in rebellion and sinning against him, and he said, okay guys, go ahead and muster your forces and come and just take over Israel. You can destroy these people. Verse 14 says, the Israelites were subject to Eglon, king of Moab, for 18 years. Now the Israelites were descendants of the tribe of Benjamin and Ephraim. You know, remember the 12 tribes of Israel? Well, most of this happened from the tribes of Benjamin and Ephraim. So now we're going to go on to verse 15. This is your history lesson, I told you. It's really fascinating though. Again, the Israelites cried out to the Lord, help! You know the history of the Old Testament. The Israelites are always saying that they're going to obey God, and then they don't, and then God punishes them, and then they cry for help, and God has mercy on them, and so then he forgives them, and then they get back into rebellion, so he punishes again, and so they cry for help. You know, they do that all the time in the Old Testament. Through the entire Old Testament, they just go back and forth between being in God's graces and being condemned. So now, God has punished Israel, and they are crying to him, and the Lord has mercy. So he gave them a deliverer. A deliverer named Ehud. Ehud was a left-handed man, the son of Jerah the Benjamite. The Israelites sent him with tribute to Eglon. Tribute means that they gave him gifts. They brought him animals, silver, and gold that they brought to honor King Eglon. Because remember, Eglon was in power over Israel. So they had cried out to God, and God sent them Ehud, who was a left-handed man. And he sent Ehud to deliver them so that they could bring their gifts and their tributes, their gold and their silver, etc., to Eglon, the king of Moab. Now, why do you think God mentioned that Ehud was a left-handed man? Well, historically, the Benjamites had tended to have birth defects, and they had lots of offspring who had right hands that were not able to be used, so the left hand became very important. Now, when we were doing Bible translation, we were using resources from the Canadian Bible Society and the American Bible Society, and people who really knew their stuff. And we thought, well, we can't just say anything from the tribe of Benjamin, and they were left-handed. We couldn't just say that. We had to talk about why they were saying this. You know, with American Sign Language, you need to be very specific. English is a little more of an abstract language. So I was thinking, how am I going to get this across? And then someone said, yeah, you can do that. Follow your heart and feel what it's like. That tribe had birth defects. It was a genetic condition. Not all of the people, but many folks were born with withered right hands. So if God designed you to be right-handed, you're going to have to use your left because your right doesn't work. You know, it's really hard to use your left hand if you're a right-handed person. It's hard to brush your hair and brush your teeth and cut your meat because God designed you to be right-handed. Now, how many of you all are left-handed? Can you raise your hands? Wow, we've got lots. And some of you, and both your children are left-handed too? And you've got a right-handed and a left-handed one. Well, when I was growing up, I had a twin, my twin sister, and I think for me as well, I can't remember. And, she died, so I can't ask her. But my twin started to write with her left. But the School for the Deaf at that time would not let people write with their left hands. They thought there was something wrong, and so they forbid her to do that and taught her to write with her right. And now my twin sister writes with her left, or does not write with her left, but writes with her right. And I think that I'm like JJ, I can write with both. I am actually ambidextrous because I eat with my left, but I put my watch on my right. I cut with my left hand and I sign with my right. I play basketball with my right, and actually I can play basketball with my left too. I've got more strength actually in my left hand, but it's strange. So I think that maybe my mother did not allow me to use my left hand. And so I learned how to use both hands. In that time there was no choice. And back in the Israelites' time, God sent Ehud, who was a left-handed man. So I'm thinking that he was probably affected with the genetic issue where he had a withered right hand. But anyway, let's see what happens here. It says, verse 16 says, now Ehud had made a double-edged sword. Means it was sharp on two sides. It was about 1.5 feet long, which he strapped to his right thigh under his clothing. He presented the tribute to Eglon, king of Moab, who was a very fat man. Now, if God mentioned this, there was a good reason for it. This guy was obese. When Ehud presented the gifts and the tributes, and then he left, he sent on their way the men who had carried it, and he told them that he had, as the idols neared Gilgal, he turned back and said, "I have a secret message for you, O king." The king said, "Quiet," and all his attendants left him. Ehud then approached him while he was sitting alone in the upper room of his summer palace. And Ehud said, "I have a message from God for you," as the king rose from his seat. He was pretty interested because Ehud had a secret message from God for him, so he was actually going to rise to hear it. Ehud reached with his left hand, drew the sword from his right thigh, and plunged it into the king's belly. Now this was quite a challenge for Bible translation. Imagine, this is a foot, so imagine another 6 inches. He drew this from his thigh, and people might wonder where your thigh is. Where is it? Was it his outer thigh or his inner thigh? Where do you think he had it?
Inner thigh.
I'm thinking with his robe, most soldiers at that time would draw from their left side. But God sent Ehud, a left-handed man. He could not use his right hand at all. So he was not able to do it, to put his knife in the traditional sense. It said it was on his thigh, and I was trying to figure out how to sign this. I think it was on the inner thigh. Other people thought it was on the outer side. We had a big old controversy about which side of the leg it was on. But imagine, the king is this huge guy, and here's a picture of an artist depiction. It's a big knife. All of the soldiers were carrying theirs on their left. So the king was not expecting anything on the right side. You know, the king knew if someone was going to be killing him, he would be drawing from his left side. It didn't really register to him that Ehud was unable to use his right hand. So when Ehud drew with his left hand, the king was not prepared. And the king did not expect to see a knife. Well, I actually have a ruler, but did not expect to see the knife come from that side of the body. So the king was stunned. And that is a testimony. What do you think the testimony is? It's Ehud testimonies that he was unable to use his right hand. Okay, Ehud had a disability, right? He had a physical disability. God sent someone with a disability to save Israel. You know, we would think that's impossible. How could somebody with a disability come and save the Israelites from 3 gigantic armies, powerful armies? There's no way they could overcome them. So God called a man with a disability. He had power through his disability because he was using an unexpected part of his body. Now, I'm not saying that you deaf folks are disabled at all. I mean, if you want to think that deafness is a disability, that's fine with me. Some people do think it is because communication is a difficulty. But my point is, every person has something that could be considered a disability. Maybe it's depression. Maybe it's low self-esteem. Maybe someone's afflicted with anxiety. Maybe we're disabled because of our past experiences. You know, past experiences can poison us from head to toe. They can be crippling and allow us not to move on. They can give us mental anguish, they can disrupt our sleep, they can really just mess us up completely and we're unable to move on. If that happened, we couldn't go kill the king And who's the king that we're trying to kill? Well, that would be Satan, which whatever is negative in our lives. But sometimes we can be so emotionally crippled that we cannot move on. That God did use someone with a disability to kill the king. And that is his testimony. His testimony, if Ehud were speaking, he would say, God used me, even without my right hand, to save Israel. God used me. He chose me to save them. And maybe you can say, God will use you to save whoever. You know, it doesn't matter if I had 1 disability or 10 disabilities. God can use me to serve him. God can use me to save people. God can use me to help his kingdom. Even if I have a disability, God has still chosen me to work for him, the same as he chose Ehud. You know, our life experiences from childhood to adulthood can sometimes just knock us over. Sometimes we have huge experiences that hurt us. They hurt us mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. But you know what? We can still be called by God and be used to serve him, to accomplish his work. You know, you've got power. Every one of us has power. Let's look at verses 22 and 23. I love this story. You know, I like to teach history. You know, when you read the Bible, you're kind of reading through, and if you do a lot of translating, then you've got to really search out the meaning. Because we don't want to add anything that would be misinformation, and we don't want to subtract any information. We don't want to make any errors in this word. So it's really fascinating to get into the whole analysis of these passages. I absolutely love Bible translation. Verse 22 says, I'm not sure how this worked, but when Ehud, drew his sword and plunged it into the king's belly, I'm not sure how he did it, but he did it. I don't know if he did it backhanded or front-handed or what. I mean, how did it work if he had his elbow leading? I mean, I don't know how it would work. He did it really quickly, so I'm thinking he must have led with his elbow. But it said he plunged it into the king's belly, and even the handle sank in after the blade, which came out his back. Ehud did not pull the sword out, and the fat closed in over it. So you couldn't even see the handle. The guy was so big. Stabbed the king. Then Ehud went out to the porch. He shut the doors of the upper room behind him, and locked them. Here we go. It says Ehud did not pull the sword out, and even the handle sank in after the blade, which came out his back. So it would look like he plunged the blade in and it protruded through his back, right? Isn't that kind of what you would envision? But remember, this guy was huge. I don't think a 1.5 long blade could penetrate all the way through his huge, gigantic body. So we're trying to figure out what this means. It came out his back. What does that mean? What really happened? I don't think he could actually penetrate him. The king was too gargantuan for that. So anyway, after asking the American Bible Society folks and the Canadian Bible Society folks for help, what happened? There's no way it could have gone through his back. We have to learn that what he did was, when it said it came out his back, it means it came out his bowels. So his bowels came out. So that's important to know, because in verse 25, it says, 24, after he, meaning Ehud, had gone, the servants came and found the doors of the upper room locked. They said, "Oh, he must be relieving himself in the inner room of the house," which means he must have been going to the bathroom. And we know that the sword pierced his bowel because the inner room was where the bathroom was. And so the servants came, they found the inner room door locked, and they also smelled the bowel there. So that's how they knew that the king was in the bathroom. And that's good, because the soldiers would never interfere with their bathroom time. They know sometimes these things take a little longer than others. So that gave Ehud time to escape. So imagine Ehud had run to his horse and was escaping quickly. And remember, Ehud only had one functional hand. And he had killed the most powerful king, the king who was commanding all three armies. So he needed time to make his getaway. So the servants thought, oh, the king's in the bathroom. So then verses 25 through 27 say, the servants waited and waited and waited to the point of embarrassment. But when the king did not open the doors of the room, they took a key and unlocked them. There they saw their lord fallen to the floor, dead. While they waited, Ehud got away. Isn't it amazing how this all worked out? He had killed the king, the bowel was expended from the body, the servants waited because they thought the king was in the bathroom, and Ehud was making his escape at the same time. And he was saved. He passed by the idols and escaped to Sarah. When he arrived there, he blew a trumpet. He blew a trumpet in the hill country of Ephraim, and the Israelites went down with him from the hills, with him leading them. So that trumpet signified that they had won and that their punishment would be over. Now that's his testimony. Now, I'm not being critical about anything, so I don't want anybody to feel bad. But you know, people like to come up sometimes and give their testimonies and talk about my former experience was horrible, my childhood was terrible, my life was messed up, but God saved me. And people like to give their testimonies about what a terrible experience they had. Maybe they've experienced abuse or whatever, and they get all emotional and upset. And they're reliving their bad experiences. You know, and we hate to see people feeling that badly, right? We don't want to see people relive their bad experiences. That's horribly sad. So if you want to give a testimony, come on up and give a testimony. But I know when somebody wants to do that, they're just going to relive their bad experiences again. And then they're going to get all upset and cry and break down again. Because Christians love to come up and give testimonies about, oh, my life was horrible and then God saved me. And then that's where the story stops. You know, sometimes you need to see about families' testimonies, like, oh, my husband did this, that, the other thing, and we had this happen, and then God came into our lives, but then what happens is the family goes back to fighting because they've relived the past story again. So if you keep repeating the past issues, you're not going to be free. But I know people like to share God's power. And that's important. And we should share our experiences once, but not repeatedly. People say, give your testimony. And I say, well, what kind of testimony do you want to give? What did God do in your life? And sometimes I have to because, you know, Christians always give testimonies, and so they come up and do that. But I hate the fact that we relive things. I would rather be moving forward instead of looking backwards. Because sometimes if you look backwards, then you fall down, and you get up again, and even when you're moving forward, you fall down, but you get up again, and you keep moving forward. So I love to just forget what happened in the past, or something that happened to me, or something that I had done wrong. You know, it's not in my head anymore until people ask me to give a testimony. And then I have to look back and talk about it. Or, you know, some people are just nosy and they want to know stuff. So then I have to look back and tell about what happened in the past. But to me, the past is past. I am moving forward. And I love that about Ehud's testimony. This is an example of a true testimony. When we give our true testimonies, I read one testimony person who was writing, and I love this definition of testimony. This person said, I thought I had it memorized, but I want to make sure I get it right. Said that testimony is not what God did for you. Testimony is what you are doing for God. Isn't that powerful? I absolutely love that definition. Testimony is not, oh God, I did this and this and the other thing, and God helped me, but I'm still really torn up about it, but God has helped me, and oh, it's still bothering me, and I'm still having depression issues because of that. No. It's what we are doing for God. God saved me, and now I am doing. God saved me from a bad experience, and now I am doing this. I am moving forward because He saved me, and that's a fact. You can't just say, God saved me. You have to say, God saved me, He delivered me, and now I am doing this. So think about, what are you doing for Him? Do you guys like that? Do you like that definition of testimony? Amen and amen? Well, the key is, you cannot say that you can't feel, that you can't think, that you can't deliver me because I am just stuck. No. You are not without a way out. God, you can't say, oh God, you can't use me because I'm too old. Or, oh God, you can't use me because I'm too young. Or, oh my gosh, God, I've had so many horrible experiences in my past that I cannot move on. Or, I've got too many disabilities, you can't save me. Or, I'm too sick. That's not true. God can use you in your disability. You have no excuses. You have no excuses, but even more importantly, God can still use you regardless of the severity of what you're going through or your disability. Maybe you've got depression. Maybe you do have an illness. Maybe you've got all these maladies. That's all okay. You can work through your experiences, and God will still use you, even while you're in the midst of your maladies. The point is not that you feel insignificant, but that you feel depressed, and that you feel that you can't serve God, and so therefore you cannot move forward, but you'll be stuck either now or in the past. That's a lie. You can move forward with your disability. You can move forward with your illness, with your depression. Just, you can let go of your past. And that can be your testimony. Oh, yesterday, oh my gosh, God saved me. And now I am moving forward. So what are you doing? What are you doing? You're moving forward. And tell people that. Say, you know, I was afflicted with a terrible experience. God delivered me, and now here's what I'm doing. So think about what you're doing for God's kingdom. Yes and yes. It's true. It's powerful. When you accept the fact that God can use you with your disability, and just as He used Ehud with his withered hand to kill the king, can you imagine? It's a little bit scary. You know, suppose you walked in somewhere and you were supposed to catch a killer. And, there, it's done. You decapitated somebody with one hand. I mean, that's what he did with Ehud. He used Ehud to take care of that king with one hand. And because Ehud had the confidence and the courage to do that for God, he was successful. And God can use you to do that. There's a lot of beautiful testimonies in the Bible. But God uses, it's possible for God to use you. And then the king, which would be the devil, will send people into your lives that will try and pull you back down. That will try to pull you back into that place of ineffectiveness. Well, go ahead and pull out your sword and kick him in the back. And you know what? As you do that and you move forward, people are going to be jealous. They're going to say you're too happy. They'll say you're too positive. I mean, something that happened about 6 months ago, there was an upsetting situation and somebody criticized me and said, oh, you're just too happy, you're too positive, you're making me crazy. It's true. They told me that. They thought that it would be impossible to make it through life's trials with a positive attitude and to still be happy. And it's not impossible at all. Move forward. Look forward. Use your dagger and kill. Not really. I'm speaking figuratively here. But just cut through the obstacles. Get rid of all those kings. Get rid of all those Eglons that are in your life. And see what will happen. And what happened now? In the final verse, we'll find out what happened to Ehud. The last couple of verses say, Ehud escaped. He blew the trumpet. The Israelites all went to war to see what had happened. And Ehud said, follow me, he ordered. I love this. For the Lord has given Moab, your enemy, into your hands. Did you catch what it said? This is really critical. Who had God called? He called Ehud with his left hand to kill the king. Ehud killed the king. Ehud had a disability. It was scary for him to go against this huge king and know that he was tasked to kill him. I'm sure he was sweating bullets. But he killed him. He did a powerful, courageous, amazing, absolutely stunning act. And then he escaped. If you've watched some violent movie, you know that people that have evil intent are something else. They are bloodthirsty. Absolutely bloodthirsty. So Ehud escaped. I don't know if he rode a horse or walked or how he got away, but anyway, he made his escape. And then he called all the Israelites and said, come on, it's time for us to rise up and fight now, because the Lord has given Moab, your enemy, into your hands. That is just amazing. So what did they say? Ehud said, I didn't save you. God saved you. He didn't say, hey, come on, see what I did. I killed the king with my left hand. No, he didn't say that at all. And that is really an important lesson for us. We don't have to keep things secret. We can be very clear. God used him. Just like he said. God has given Moab, your enemy, into your hands. God has delivered you. The Lord did it. Not me. Sometimes it's hard to overcome that vanity that we have. We like recognition. We like for people to know that God used me. Yeah, it was God, but it was my skill. And God can use you with your disability, whatever it is. He can use you to do his work, but know that the glory is his, the love is his, the mercy is his, the grace is his, the power is his, that he has given to you to go out and act. Right? That's really an important point to keep in mind. You know, I just love this point. You know, I heard this a long time ago and learned this a long time ago. And I've been cogitating on it ever since. You know, when I think I cannot do one more thing, like if I can't sleep at night because I know I need to do something and I just can't do it, you know, he gives me the strength. You all pray, right? You pray for stuff. You need stuff, and so you pray every day, Lord, help me with all these things that I need, right? Other people pray too. And other people pray, Lord, help me find financial help, help me find help, assistance for my family. We all have, all over the world, people are praying to God, asking for stuff. And how does God choose to help people? Do you know? How does God help you and you and you? He sends people to you. If you pray for something, God will send some person into your life. And that means God has answered your prayer. God wants to answer our prayers, but what he really needs and really wants is to send you to kill the king. Right? And that can help you feel the inspiration to go ahead and move on. If you think, no way, I can't do this, I'm disabled. Or no way, I'm too depressed. There's no way I can move. Well, God needs you to answer prayer for other people. Because everyone prays. Yes? Amen and amen. Okay, let's go ahead.